Welcome to EPG Pachala. I am Dr. Venusatini from the Department of Philosophy, University of Hyderabad. This is Logic 1 and the name of the module on which I'll be talking is Philosophical Issues Centering Around Sentential Logic, or put it simply, it is Modal Logic. We have done in our early modules different systems of sentential logic, and we have seen that we can evolve different ways or mechanism of checking validity of arguments or truth of a logical sentences in different methods, whether it's truth tree method or axiomatic system or natural deduction system or even basic or foundational thing like truth table. Here what we will do is we will try to extend this sentential logic. What do we mean by extension is apart from the existing set of connectives, those truth functional connectives, we will introduce some more connectives with a difference that these new connectives which we will introduce are not truth functional. They are more like quantifiers which we have seen before, like universal quantifier or existential quantifier. In the sense, the modal connective that we will introduce is monadic or unary connective. So we will see how we can understand the use of such modal concepts or this connective in the light of truth functional systems like sentential logic. Now, the immediate question then, what is this modal logic? I would like to put it very simply that it is nothing but extension of sentential logic. In what sense it is an extension? Maybe we can look at a proposition and then I will explain in what way it is an extension. A proposition like Aristotle is a logician. This sentence can be verified to be true or false. In this case, it is true. Given our sentential logic, we can also deny the truth of this sentence by saying that Aristotle is not a logician. That will become a false sentence. Whether you assert or deny, it is still within the domain of sentential logic. Suppose I modify this sentence and add the word must, like Aristotle must be a logician. And how are we to understand the truth of these sentences, or rather the sentence? I've introduced the word must. So, in other words, the modal logic is an attempt to explain such use of word must in a given sentence like Aristotle is a logician. In this sense, we are going to be dealing with a set of verbs which are called modal verbs and which in turn are actually a subset of auxiliary verbs. Now, given a sentence, Aristotle is a logician, and then a modified or extension of this sentence, Aristotle must be a logician. We can see this sentence from, let us say, two different perspectives. A grammarian will immediately notice the addition of the word must in place of is. And they will say, such verb or the function of this verb is to express the attitude of the speaker towards the subject matter. So, whether there is a conviction involved in the truth of the sentence is crucial. So, there is expressing the attitude. Whether that Aristotle is a logician, I am expressing strong or weak conviction. That is attitude of the speaker. The other approach is more like objective, in which sense some philosophers and logicians in the past have discussed. The first one, we call it subjective in the sense that it has to do with attitude towards the truth claim of the sentence. The second part is called objective in contrast to subjective, because here, let me give another example that gold is yellow. Now, the objective reading will be gold must be yellow in the context of modal logic. Now, how are we to understand the relation between subject term and object term? is yellow, which is the object term, a necessary or essential feature of gold. Thus, yellowness in her or inherently reside in gold. So the objective idea is that whenever I use the word must, the gold must be yellow, I am trying to specify specific relation that holds between a property called yellow and an object or an entity called gold. So here, no suggestion of my attitude that there is a state of affairs out there and such kind of relation holds between attribute or property and the entity. So this is a detached attitude, in which sense we can read it as objective reading. Now, as a logician, we are not committed to either. We will not read it from the perspective of subjective or objective. Ours is different. But before we go on to explain this one, let me explain what is modal logic, in the sense the root word. Technically speaking, modal is coming from a word of verb, a set of verbs called modal verbs. But here we will qualify these modal verbs by saying electric modal verb or electric modal logic. So what I'm saying now about must or necessary is called electric. In Greek, it simply means truth. Electric means truth. So verbs or words which deals with truth, it is called electric modal logic. Now, as I said, how are we to understand the truth claim that Aristotle must be a logician? It is not like simply verifying whether Aristotle is a logician or not. The word must is a much stronger claim. What is the nature of the truth of this sentence? That is our concern. So in order to handle this, we have to do a little bit of manipulation. The word must will be modified by a word called necessary, in which case we will bring the word necessary to the extreme left of the sentence and put it in this phrase, like, it is necessary that Aristotle is a logician. Instead of reading Aristotle is a logician, we will say it is necessary that Aristotle is a logician. I mean, now we are looking at the verb must in the sense of operator. In the sentential logic, think about negative operator. It is not the case that Aristotle is a logician. Now, negation is at the beginning of the sentence. Or think about universal quantifier. For all values of x, if x is p, then x is q. I mean, all and some are pushed to the leftmost of the sentence, and now they are quantifiers. Here also, it is necessary are behaving like a kind of operator, but it is monadic operator and it is not truth functional. Then we have certain advantages now. When we see it as an operator, we will not read this sentence, or rather this phrase, modal phrase, it is necessary, as either committing to objective claim or subjective claim. In that sense, we have advantage. Now, it is claiming about the nature of the sentence as such. Going on, we will identify some basic concept. In any extension of sentential logic, we will need some basic concept. Here, for this, we will identify necessity, the notion of necessity as the basic concept. And there are two other related concepts. One is possible and the other impossible. So what we'll do is, we will try to define the notion of possibility and impossibility with the help of this concept necessity. So, and this, any sentences involving these concepts will be called modal sentences. So I can think of, it is possible that Aristotle is a logician, or it is impossible that Aristotle is a logician, or it is necessary that Aristotle is a logician. All these are now modal sentences. Given these modal operators, we can generate more complex sentences also along with the truth functional connectives. For instance, it is possible that either Aristotle is a logician or Aristotle is a politician. So we can, along with these modal concepts, with the help of truth functional connectives, generate more and more complex sentences. We will see some of this later on. But just like interdefinability thesis of quantificational logic, even here we are going to make another claim, which is interdefinability of modal concepts. What do we mean by this is that once we take an operator like necessary as the basic, we will define the other two with the help of this basic concept. By the thesis of interdefinability, we will try to define the other two operators, possible and impossible, with the help of this word necessity. How are we to do it? By showing equivalence. So, an expression like it is possible that P is equivalent to it is not necessary that not P. P stands for a proposition. I repeat again. It is possible that P is equivalent to it is not necessary that not P. It is impossible that P is equivalent to it is necessary that not P. I repeat, it is impossible that P is equivalent to it is necessary that not P. Notice that on the left hand side is the word possible and impossible. On the right hand side is the word necessary. In other words, we are using the word necessary or necessity to explain what is possible and impossible. So, there are more complex questions that can be raised given this understanding so far. For example, by claiming that P is possible, are we also allowed to infer that P is necessarily possible? Or is it a case that if P is possible, it is only possibly possible? That is one way. It can become more complex when you say that if it is necessary the case that P implies Q, and given P is necessary, can we go on to claim that Q is therefore also necessary? Such kind of complicated reading can occur. But those complications will result in the birth of different modal systems, which we may have to explore in the next module. For now, we will again explore another crucial ingredient of any logical system, and that we call it contradiction, the notion of contradiction. So, unless we have this notion of contradiction in a logical system, it is impossible to build any logical system. So how do we understand this notion of contradiction? We compare two sentences like, it is necessary that P. What will be the contradiction of this sentence? The contradictory sentence is this, that it is possible that not P. See, it is necessary that not P, its contradictory sentence is, it is possible that not P. The other could be, it is possible that P. Its contradictory sentence will be, it is necessary that not P. It is possible that P, its contradictory sentence will be, it is necessary that not P. So here we have defined a pair of contradictory sentences. We go on. We go back rather to the basic idea of a proposition. Let us say a sentence, birds fly, or a bird flies. It's easy to determine the truth value of this sentence. But if I go on to add, it is necessary that birds fly, how are we to understand this model sentence? Because the conviction is much stronger, the claim is much stronger, it is not necessary, it is not easy to determine the truth value of such a claim. Now, model system is an attempt, or modal logic is an attempt to provide semantics, truth semantics for this kind of modal sentences. However, there are other kind of sentences like Hyderabad is either a city or Hyderabad is not a city. You may modify this sentence with modal operators like, it is necessary that either Hyderabad is a city or it is not a city, and this sentence is not problematic because this propositional sentence is tautologous. So it is not problematic even if I say it is necessary that either Hyderabad is a city or not a city, because the sentence is tautologous. The form P or not P we know is a logical sentence, means it is tautologous. So any logical sentence, if you modify with operator like necessity, it becomes the truth value is not problematic at all. Now the proposition that I raised earlier, birds fly, and then from there it is necessary that birds fly. How are we to understand the meaning of this sentence? A logician or who is known by the name Sol Kripke has given a semantic model, and his model is called sometimes Kripkean model or possible world semantics. So let us see how this sentence can be symbolized, just like symbolization of sentential logic, because this symbolization helps us to do formal derivation. So let us look at this slide. It is necessary that P can be symbolized as box P. It is possible that P can be symbolized by a diamond P. So we will use this standard symbolization, that is box P will mean it is necessary that P, or diamond P will be read as it is possible that P. Now, how are we to understand this notion of possible worlds? Possible world semantics basically mean ways or different ways the world might have been. Let me explain this with the help of example. Now I am sitting here, but it is possible. That means it could have been the case that I am sitting on a different chair, or that I can be speaking from another angle. So these are possible ways of combining thing or state of affairs. So simply put, possible world means a possible situation. A situation needs to be described. So it's a description of a state of affairs or possible state of affairs. In other words, possible worlds is a kind of set of propositions. A set of propositions will give us a possible world. If we are to define possible world in the language of set theory, then we can imagine a possible world with only one state of affairs. So you see, W stands for a possible world, is equal to a set with just one P, that is a sentence. So if we are to define possible world in the way of a set theoretic language, then it is just a set of sentences. How different sentences can constitute to give a kind of picture of a reality. There are other claims, but we will not be entering into those contestation or philosophical issues. Like they don't, for somebody like Lewis, he will not take possible world as a set of sentences. He will think that actually possible world are as real and as actual as this world. So his understanding is different. But for now, the standard is we will treat possible world as a set of sentences. So what do we mean when we say P is true in the light of possible world semantics? I will look at the slide for this. When we say P is true, we are saying that P is true with respect to certain world W prime, even only if short form is IFF, world semantically entails P. That is, that there is a world which can make the sentence P true. Or symbolically put, there is a valuation such that P given a world W prime, then it is true. That means a sentence is true with respect to certain world. How are we to understand a modal sentence like box P, which can be read as it is necessary that P? We will read it like this. Box P is true if and only if P is true at all possible worlds. Or, to be more precise, P is true in all possible worlds which are accessible from the actual world or the referent world. Now, these are commonsensical ways of explaining modal sentences. So, what do we mean by accessibility? The idea of possible world, let us say, is not something like a science fiction world or a fairy tale world where we imagine the possibilities of many things. No, it is more like our actual world, alternative world which are possible. And so when we talk about accessibility relation between worlds, we are trying to understand the truth of certain sentence with respect to n number of possible situations. So one may say that Aristotle is a logician, or it is possible that Aristotle is a politician. In other words, in certain world, it is true that Aristotle is a logician. But with respect to another world, which may not be true in this world, in another world, it is possible that Aristotle is a politician. So that gives us the idea of possibility and the accessibility relation. For example, we may want to say that a river is flowing upward. It's a description of certain state of affairs, but that world is not accessible from our world. So though it may be claimed to be true, we cannot say this is true with respect to our world. In a sense, we cannot say it is possible that a river is flowing upward, in the sense that that world is not accessible to us. Or sometimes we can also claim that the eye of a creature is bigger than its head. It may be true, but that world is not accessible to us, in a sense that given the condition, situation, the laws of nature and things like that, we cannot actually actualize such a sentence. In that sense, we will understand simply accessibility relation. Crucial to understanding possible world semantics is actually accessibility relation. So we're not just talking about something being necessary or possible, but given some referent world or the context in which I'm making a sentence, whether certain thing is also necessary or possible. So it means it will not allow any sentence to be possible. So that's why accessibility relation is crucial in modern system to understand possible world semantics. Now let us give a more rigorous and technical definition to this idea of accessibility or defining these logical modal sentences. If we have a sentence that P is necessary or box P, we will give truth valuation like this. V in a pair of in a round bracket, box P and world will be true. In other words, the sentence that P will be true will be assigned a truth value T with respect to a world W prime, if and only if for every world, that means world n, in a set of all possible worlds, we can assign a valuation over the sentence P in all the worlds, and that in all the worlds P is actually true, and that there is a relation from world prime, W prime, to all possible worlds. The next one is possible. How do we read a possible sentence? That diamond P, or it is possible that P, how do we assign truth valuation to such a sentence? It is like this, that possible P with respect to certain world, let us say W prime, will be true if and only if for some possible world, that is from the set of all possible world, there is some world or at least one world in all the possible worlds such that you can find P being true in that world. and that world is accessible from your referent or actual world. So that is how you define a possible sentence. We have just attempted to explain modal sentence with respect to Kripkean model using all these technical symbols and concepts. Let me put it simply. What is Kripkean model, or what are the basic constituents of Kripkean model? It will be constituted by three things. So it's actually an ordered triplet. W R V. W standing for a non-empty set of all possible worlds. R is an accessibility relation that can be defined over possible worlds. V is actually a valuation function that assigns to each atomic sentence from the set of possible worlds. Now we have just seen elliptic modal logic. That means a sentence which are claiming to be true necessarily or possibly, or false in a sense necessarily or possibly. Now just like that, there can be different extension of sentential logic. In other words, a sentence can be modified differently. For example, I can say, instead of Aristotle must be a logician, I can also say Aristotle ought to be a logician. That is one way, ought to be a logician. It can be modified like Aristotle has always been a logician, or it is known that Aristotle is a logician. So depending on the kind of modification we give to propositional sentence, we can come up with different modal systems. So when I say Aristotle ought to be a logician, I am introducing a word ought. These are called a deontic concept, and any sentences involving deontic concepts like ought, ought not, may not are called deontic sentences, and we can have a logical systems around these deontic sentences, but we don't have time to explore all the details of deontic sentence, deontic logic. So I'll just explain some minimum principles which go on to define or to build a system of deontic logic. A sentence like it is obligatory that P can be symbolized OP, and it is permissible that P can be symbolized by PP. Now what is this D? That means we will have a domain of discourse D. So think of a world where there are a number of deontic sentences like it ought to be the case that the earth is round, or it is permissible that education is free, things like that. There can be a set of deontic sentences, and how are we to assign truth value to this kind of deontic sentences? We will assign that with respect to an idea or a notion called ideal world. In other words, with respect to a deontic world, a world where there are a lot of deontic sentences, there will be an ideal world. An ideal world is where all the deontic sentences are true, are actual or actualized. For example, when I say it ought to be the case that education is free for all, education is free for all. Here in my actual world, I am saying it ought to be the case, but in the actual world, it is not. But if with respect to this actual world, there I can come up with an ideal world and imagine that in that world, it is true. That is, the sentence is actualized. That is, education is really free for all. So I am able to conceive such a world, and with relation to this ideal world, I can make deontic sentences. So the meaning of deontic sentences are defined in relation to ideal worlds. So how are we to how are we to understand it is obligatory that P, or it is permissible that P? When we say that an obligatory sentence is true, then we are saying with respect to a world, let us say world 0, and the valuation of this sentence over this world is true. If it is true, then what we are saying is that that sentence P, let us say education is free, is actualized. That means it is a state of affairs which is true in every deontic alternative world. That means any kind of world which is conceived to be better or ideal. And in all those ideal worlds, the sentence is actually true. That is, education is free. When it is the case, then we say that, and if all these worlds are accessible from actual world, the reference world in which you say it ought to be the case that P, then we say it is true. Now, it is permissible that P. How do we understand this? It's actually a valuation with respect to a world 0, and then we assign true to this sentence. It is permissible P when there is at least one alternative deontic world, and that is a subset of all possible worlds, and that is accessible from our world. That means if there is one deontic alternative world where that sentence education is free is actual, then we say it is possible that P, that means it is possible that education is free. So that is how we understand a permissible sentence. Now, from here we can go on to talk about other logical systems. It is epistemic logic. It is also an extension of sentential logic, but we will do necessary modification to give a modal character. So, epistemic logic will deal with sentences like S knows that P. In other words, S is a cognitive agent or cognitive subject, knows that P stands for proposition. So we can modify this by saying that it is known that P. So instead of introducing the subject S, we'll just say it is known that P, and it can be symbolized by KP. So using this Kripkean model or semantics, we can we can try to understand the meaning of this sentence. So we will need the model, which is W, set of all possible worlds, and then R, accessibility relation, and some kind of valuation, truth function. So here, when we say that it is known that P, we say with respect to a world prime, this is true, even only if for every world which is a subset of all possible worlds, our valuation P is true in all possible worlds. That means if in all the possible worlds which are accessible from that world or accessible to us, that P is true. In other words, let us say Aristotle is a logician. Then how to make it epistemic? It is known that Aristotle is a logician. So in all the possible worlds which can be accessed from our world, it is true that Aristotle is a logician. Then we can claim that it is known that Aristotle is a logician. Likewise, there may be a different characterization for the same truth claim. For example, modal. M stands for a model, and with respect to the world W, this model and the world semantically entails the truth of KP, even only if for every world in set of all possible worlds, such that when there is a model and a world given, P is true, and there is a relation from W prime to Wn. In that sense, we can say that we know P, or P is known or knowable. With this, we have come to the end of this module. But before I wind up, let us quickly revise what we have learned here. We have seen different systems of sentential logic, and here we have tried to see that we can extend sentential logic to build different extensional logic, which we call it modal logic. And we have also seen that there are different there are different ways to modify a proposition, and accordingly we can construct different modal systems. And modal system is actually understood in relation to certain words called modal verbs. So these words will behave like a kind of connective or operator, but these are not actually truth functional operator, but rather they help us to understand the meaning or the context in which a modal sentence can be made true or false. And it is in this context that we have introduced Kripkean semantics or possible world semantics. And in the light of this possible world semantics, we have tried to explain different modal sentences. Thank you.